Pakistan's journey to independence, the untold struggles behind 14th August 1947. The dawn of Pakistan's independence looked something like this. And now we move towards the backdrop of this great story. From 1857 to 1947, the Indian subcontinent wrote a history unmatched by the world. These 90 years reshaped the world's map, and the story of Pakistan began in 1857. Two key figures in this era were Bahadur Shah Zafar and Sir Syed Ahmed Khan. After 1857, the British government took full control of India, and when rebellion broke out in their army, they hanged all the soldiers involved. The hangings were so widespread that ropes and trees became scarce. Looking at the paintings from that time, it seems as though there was no place left where bodies were not hanging. This brutality was meant to ensure that no voice would ever rise against the British again, and the atmosphere of tyranny was intense. In such times, Sir Syed Ahmed Khan emerged as a pivotal figure. Without his efforts, Pakistan might not exist today. He served as a beacon of hope for Muslims in those dark days. Sir Syed Ahmed Khan boldly demanded that Muslims be given government jobs. Before him, no one had the courage to make such demands for the Muslim community, as their political and economic rights were being systematically annihilated. During that time, apart from Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, there was no one to speak up for the rights of Muslims. It was in this context that Sir Syed wrote a pamphlet titled Asbab-e-Baghawat-e-Hind, The Causes of the Indian Revolt, in which he argued that Muslims were being denied their rights and were not receiving education. He warned that if this continued, Muslims would fall far behind while Hindus would advance, and this denial of rights could potentially lead to rebellion. Sir Syed then initiated a movement for the education of Muslims, known as the Muhammadan Educational Conference. He understood the importance of education and knew that it was the only way to uplift the Muslim community. Through this movement, he campaigned across India, advocating for Muslims to pursue education and establish educational institutions. It's important to note that the All India Congress was founded in 1885, but Sir Syed discouraged Muslims from participating in politics at that time. He believed in the separate identity of Muslims and wanted them to focus entirely on education. This was also why he founded the Muslim Scientific Society, aiming to translate Western education and research into Urdu to make it accessible to the Muslim population. Furthermore, it was Sir Syed who first laid the foundation of the two-nation theory, recognizing the distinct identity and needs of Muslims in India. But friends, the question here is, do you think it was easy for Sir Syed Ahmed Khan to educate Muslims while the British were in power? When a madrasa was being built in Ghazipur, funds were needed. Sir Syed observed that Muslims did not have the money to contribute. So he suggested to Muslim leaders that they encourage Muslim households to save a handful of flour separately whenever they cooked 3 meals a day. History records that Sir Syed would go door to door collecting this flour, selling it, and using the money for the madrasa's expenses. This marked the beginning of the education and training of Muslims, but it was not easy. Since 1857, it had been evident that the era of subjugation for the Muslims of India had begun. The British, in alliance with the Hindus, sought to suppress the Muslims. The British policy was to deny Muslims the same rights that were being granted to the Hindus. This led Muslims to realize the need for a separate electorate and a political party that could represent Muslims in the subcontinent. However, such an endeavor was impossible without the permission of the British. The question then arose: which Muslim leader would have the courage to present this demand to the British? The British believed that the Congress was providing proper rights to everyone in the subcontinent. However, Muslims decided that Sir Aga Khan would present their demands to the British Viceroy. This led to the formation of the All India Muslim League in 1906, which was a significant victory for the Muslims at that time. It gave them a political platform to represent their interests with dignity. Now, friends, we come to the biggest hero of this entire story, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah. The question is, when did he join the All India Muslim League? Before joining the Muslim League, Quaid-e-Azam was a member of the Congress. The story goes that once, while traveling to England for holidays, Maulana Muhammad Ali Jinnah accompanied him. During this trip, Maulana Muhammad Ali Jinnah convinced Quaid-e-Azam to leave the Congress and join the Muslim League. Quaid-e-Azam agreed, but set a condition. He would only join the Muslim League if it abandoned its loyalty to the British. Just as the Congress spoke of self-rule and independence, the Muslim League would also have to advocate for self-governance and independence. And so, in 1913, Muhammad Ali Jinnah joined the Muslim League, which greatly boosted the morale of Muslims. Now, friends, let's move on to an interesting event that took place in 1928. The British sent a commission to India known as the Simon Commission. The purpose of this commission was to assess the political situation and consider reforms to the 1919 Government of India Act, which the British had signed with Indian leaders, promising to revisit and reform it after 10 years. However, the Muslims of the subcontinent were not satisfied with this approach, and in this case, even the Congress stood with the Muslims. There was widespread protest across India against the Simon Commission. Wherever the commission traveled in India, it was met with black flags and shoes, and the slogan, "Simon Go Back," echoed everywhere. Even those Indians who didn't speak English learned this slogan. Due to the intense opposition, the Simon Commission's meetings were held in locations far from populated areas, with strict security arrangements in place to ensure the commission's safety. Then, the expert kite flyers of the subcontinent did something that is still remembered in history. These kite flyers were skilled in physics calculations. They flew kites, and after precise calculations, they deliberately cut the strings, causing the kites to fall exactly where the Simon Commission's meeting was taking place. The kites bore the message, "Simon Go Back." Following this, an important incident occurred that changed the perception of Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who had believed that the Congress was sincere towards Muslims. He became disheartened after the Motilal Nehru's proposal, known as the Nehru Report. This report, issued in 1928, negated the agreements made with Muslims in the 1916 Lucknow Pact, effectively overturning them. The Nehru Report declared that Muslims were merely another minority, like any other in the subcontinent, and it proposed reducing their representation from 1/3 to 1/4. Additionally, Nehru believed that only Hindus, as the majority, could consult with the British and become part of the government. This report highlighted the exclusion of Muslims from significant political power and further deepened the divide between the communities. History tells us that after the Nehru Report, Muhammad Ali Jinnah was so disheartened that tears welled up in his eyes. This shows how deeply Jinnah cared for the Muslims and how much he understood the challenges they would face after the report. Jinnah was not just a politician. He was a great leader of the subcontinent, strong and resolute. However, the implications of the Nehru Report were too much for him to bear, as he understood the true significance of his mission for the Muslims. Now, when we talk about the Pakistan movement, it is incomplete without mentioning Allama Iqbal. After Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, Allama Iqbal was the second significant figure in history who advocated the two-nation theory. In 1930, during his famous address in Allahabad, Allama Iqbal spoke about the two-nation theory, emphasizing that Muslims and Hindus were two separate nations. He highlighted that their way of life, traditions, and cultures were entirely different from each other, and therefore, they could not be merged into a single nation. Thus, it was deemed impossible for these two communities to live together in one country. Hence, it was proposed that Muslims in India should be given a separate territory where they could live according to their own culture and core values. This idea is known as the ideology of Pakistan. To realize this vision, Allama Iqbal saw Muhammad Ali Jinnah as the person who could turn his dreams into reality. However, the journey was not easy. In 1937, the Muslim League faced a significant defeat in the elections, and the Congress emerged with a dominant position in the government. This marked the beginning of severe challenges for Muslims, as the Congress began to implement policies solely benefiting their interests. The government institutions started featuring portraits of Mahatma Gandhi, and Vande Mataram was declared the national anthem. Schools were converted into temples, and Muslim children were forcibly sent there, where they were made to participate in religious ceremonies. Additionally, during the time of the azan, called a prayer in mosques, loud music was played outside to drown out the call, and Muslim girls were pressured to wear the tilak, a Hindu religious mark. These actions created an environment of severe intolerance and discrimination against Muslims, further justifying the need for a separate nation where they could practice their religion and culture freely. The government took no action against these injustices, and the oppression continued until 1939, when Congress's rule began to face its end. At this point, Muslims across the subcontinent, responding to Jinnah's call, prayed fervently for deliverance, falling into prostration before Allah. This led Congress to realize the significant mistake it had made by not supporting the Muslim League in the elections. Muslims understood that if they were facing such difficulties under British rule and Congress governance, the situation would likely worsen once the British were no longer in power. They recognized that the Muslim League was the only platform that could truly secure their rights. As a result, more and more Muslims joined the Muslim League, which gained further popularity and strength. Seeing the fervor and dedication of the Muslim community, Muhammad Ali Jinnah became more confident and determined. He concluded that the time had come to officially declare the establishment of an independent Muslim state. In 1940, Muhammad Ali Jinnah announced a pivotal meeting, and people, eager to hear him speak, made their way to Lahore without knowing the specifics of the address. When Jinnah began his speech, journalists reported an unusual silence over the entire ground, so quiet that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. On March 23, 1940, during this historic session, the resolution was passed declaring that areas with a Muslim majority would form a separate Muslim state. This moment was the culmination of Sir Syed Ahmed Khan's vision, as the seed he had planted 50 years earlier had now grown into a robust tree. Students from Aligarh University had become the vanguard of the freedom movement. The 1946 elections were crucial for the Muslim League. It was a do or die situation. History witnessed the Muslim League's remarkable resurgence, which, after having seemingly vanished from political relevance in the 1937 elections, emerged as the sole representative of Muslims. The year 1947 was challenging for Muslims, as the British government sent Lord Mountbatten to oversee the transition of power. The British and Congress were determined to prevent the emergence of Pakistan on the world map. The subcontinent was engulfed in chaos, with violence at its peak, and the streets were filled with corpses. Yet, amidst this turmoil, the greatest migration in history began. On August 14, 1947, the dawn of Pakistan's independence rose, making the impossible possible and placing Pakistan on the global map. During this struggle for freedom, nearly 1 crore, 10 million people migrated, and around 100,000 Muslims sacrificed their lives. Despite the oppression, the spirit of the Muslims never wavered, largely due to the extraordinary leadership of Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who ensured that the resolve of the nation remained strong. This was the story of Pakistan's independence.
आप आजाद हैं, आजाद रहें। आप लोग इस मुल्क पाकिस्तान में अपनी अपनी इबादत गाहों, मस्जिदों या मंदिरों में जाने के लिए। आपका मजहब क्या है, जात क्या है, कौम क्या है, इसका हुकूमत के मामलात से कोई ताल्लुक नहीं।
अस्सलामु अलैकुम। पाकिस्तान ब्रॉडकास्टिंग सर्विस, हम लाहौर से बोल रहे। 13 और 14 अगस्त सन 47 ईस्वी की दरमियानी रात 12 बजे है। तुलुए सुबह आजाद।
I hope this video provided you with valuable information. I'll see you soon with another interesting video. Thank you for watching and goodbye.